Welcome back to New York to another episode of New York City Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports. It is episode 90, our last episode of April. As we get into May, the weather was beautiful today in the New York, New Jersey area. It's like 80 degrees. It could be a beautiful day for one New York team as the Knicks win tonight. Not only did they clinch at home for the first time in what seems like a long time, but they get to move on to the second round. It was a really tough, grueling 2 games in Detroit. We'll talk about the controversial non-call. We'll talk about Jalen Brunson. We'll talk about Carlton Towns, Tom Thibodeau, all those things. It might not be a great night for the Devils. Game 5 tonight in Carolina. Devils try to hold off the nation after almost coming back from 3 goals down in Game 4. What do they have to do to really turn the series around? We'll talk the NFL draft. Giants have their new quarterback and their new pass rusher in the future. The Jets don't have a sexy draft, but they have a solid draft. We'll talk about what both teams did out in Green Bay. The Mets are the first team with 20 wins in all Major League Baseball, and they have a really good series coming up tonight at home against Arizona that we'll get into. The Yankees lose last night in Baltimore, but overall, a win tonight, they would win 18 of their first 30, but the closer is no longer the closer. They got needed in the long term for this Yankees bullpen. We'll talk wins for the Red Bulls and NYCFC this past week. Gotham has an up and down week, but Esther Gonzalez shoots some scoring goals left and right. We got Liberty preseason basketball coming up next week. And St. John's has more players in the league, including the motorcycle. They now have the number 1 transfer class in the country. What does it mean and why one player going back to the Big East school could hurt their chances of reaching as Big East regular season champions next year? It's all coming up next on New York City Sports, Night Sports Radio. Let's be all those sports with Steve. Just fit. And of course, welcome back to New York State Sports, Night Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. Hard to believe that we've reached 90 episodes already. And I do appreciate you joining in on Tuesday. We had a different day yesterday, work-related things. Got to go to Jimmy Fallon last night, which was a lot of fun. Recommend anybody gets a chance to in the New York area go check out, get tickets for the show. It's really a fantastic time. We also want to remind you, of course, that starting next week we'll have a new showtime. It'll be on Fridays at noon due to other work-related purposes. Now, this actually I think is going to be helpful too because Mondays we were on to preview the football slate during the fall, but now it's going to be, hey, we're going to preview the weekend baseball series instead. So those weekend series where you're home, you get a chance to go with your family to those weekend baseball games, whether it be Citi Field, Yankee Stadium. So I think there's pros and cons to it. But again, next Friday, May 9th, is going to be our next regular show. We may do another show over the course of the week. You just never know. Especially depending on what goes on with the Knicks and what their potential, if they do win tonight or over the next couple of days, what their second round opponent could be. But we'll talk about that later on. I want to remind you, of course, you can follow us on X, IG, Facebook, and TikTok at IE Sports Radio. Please, if you're listening here on YouTube, like and subscribe. And put in the comment that you subscribe because of this show. Just put you subscribe because of New York State Sports. Again, our show page is on the bottom as well. You can learn more about our hosts, all of our shows, which are fantastic. As a reminder, of course, you can follow me on X at NY State Sports IE. That's the show's account. I'll be live tweeting some of the Game 5 tonight between Knicks and Pistons. Of course, being it's Tuesday, you'll see me twice on the air today. Not only right now at noon Eastern here locally, but later on tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern. I'll be on the Bullpen Bulletin with Alden K and Mike Pat talking some baseball. So we'll do some baseball talk here, and then we'll talk some national baseball stuff on the show later tonight. So be sure to, and you can follow me at Rickinator555, but mostly I tweet from both accounts as well. So let's first hear from our sponsors, and then we will dive into everything New York Knicks and why I don't think non-calls really matter and why this team is 1 win away from the next round. You're listening to New York State Sports, Night Sports Radio, your direct feed for all their sports. We'll be right back after this word from our sponsors.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And of course, thank you to our awesome sponsors here at IE Sports Radio. Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, a great snack to have during the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs. Maybe you're just watching some baseball. It's always a lot of fun. Seal the Deal Vital Apparel, great cause supporting mental health awareness, and it's great to wear at the gym. Seal the Deal Wax Seals for all those weddings and wedding invitations, special gatherings. And of course, follow us here at IE Sports Radio. We got shows every most regions, most sports. So be sure to check all those things out. Again, feel free to comment throughout the day, throughout the show here on YouTube or on X or on Twitch. Always happy to hear from you. Taryn Rodriguez, of course, all the person behind the glass or the person behind the X is here. Thank you again, Mr. Taryn. Ralph is in the house as well from the Unity Report. No, Ralph, this is not a new time slot. As you mentioned at the top of the show, it's just for this week. And then next week, we go to our constant time slot, at least for the summer, Fridays at noon. So different slot today, but this is just a temporary one, just one day from when we usually do it. And Ralph has a lot of comments on the hockey that we'll dive into later. Of course, we mentioned Devils Game 5 tonight. Islanders are looking for a new president, and the Rangers could be looking at a new coach maybe in the next few days, depending on what happened yesterday in Ralph's region that he covers. Definitely opened some eyes here going on. But let's talk some Knicks. If you watched, we haven't been here since Game 2. Of course, we are now on X are doing some shorts in terms of trying to keep you updated when we don't have shows constantly. I did a short after Game 2. That was very frustrating for the Knicks, especially Detroit dominated the game. They got back in to tie it, only for Dennis Schroeder to hit the 3. And you wondered, I thought at least tonight the Knicks would be playing Game 5 at 2-2. That was my expectation. Is like you can't expect them to win both in Detroit. They could at least expect them to get one. And they did much better. They took both. They went Thursday night while everybody was watching the draft. Knicks went in there and won 118-116. And you've got to give credit to the stars. And everybody showed up that didn't show up in Game 2. Mikal Bridges had 20 points and 7 boards. OG had 22. Karl-Anthony Towns, we'll get into him later, really has answered the critics extremely well. He had 31 and 8. Jalen Brunson, 30.7 boards, 9 assists. Josh Hart had 11 boards. Knicks were much better on the glass than they were in Game 4, which we'll get into in a minute. Despite the Pistons making 16 threes, they just shot 45%. I think that was really the big difference in this game. The Knicks turned 14 turnovers into 18 points. They do very well with turning turnovers into points. Pistons turned over a ton. That's really one of their Achilles heels. But the Knicks did a really good job there, especially Detroit kept trying to rally, kept trying to fight back. And what was really an up and down game, and the Knicks were up 13 at the break. And Detroit, who's been the better team in the third quarter for the bulk of these series, fought back. They outscored them in the third, outscored them in the fourth too. But the Knicks made the big shots when they mattered. And then you get to Sunday. And this series with the Pistons has felt like 1990s basketball. There's been physicality, tough baskets, guys getting contacted. Is there a foul? Is there not a foul? We've dove into so much of these things. Knicks came out very well, up 10 after the first quarter. Detroit cut it to 7 at the break. Knicks at one point led by double digits. You mentioned Pistons then dominate the Knicks in the third quarter, go up 28-14. Detroit has an 11-point lead midway through the fourth, similar to Game 1. And the Knicks just answered back. And it was really because of two dudes, Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. And we'll get into Cat first. We think back to Game 2 when he didn't even get any touches in the second half. A guy who looked out of it, a guy who looked like he was disinterested, and had to be some frustration. Now, you could blame Tibbs for that because there was no plays being called for Cat to keep him engaged. But sometimes you got to blame the player for not going to the ball. But Cat did that. We mentioned his Game 3 numbers. In Game 4, he goes for 32 points, 11 rebounds, 27 points, 9 rebounds, 10 of 23 shooting, 5 threes, including the game-winning three-pointer with under a minute to go. That's a player that you have the criticism of Cat, and that's fair, and I think he should be more dominating in the paint than what he's been doing. Pistons own the paint in Game 4. Jalen Duren had 17 boards, and they are attacking at will when they get into the lane. You want Cat to do that, especially with Isaiah Stewart being out the last 3 games. You want Towns to go at Duren, to go at Tobias Harris, to go at a Paul Reed. Like, you want him to attack those matchups, but unfortunately, that's not Cat's game. He's not the grit down push it into the paint big. He's a big that likes to shoot. But he's very efficient with the shots at times. He's a really good job at the mid-range. And he did just that extremely well. So you got to give him credit for that, for I think responding out in Detroit, what a lot of people gave him criticism for. I don't think people blamed him too much in game 2. I think a lot of the blame went to Mikal Bridges, who had a good first half and then didn't make the three-pointer late when they needed him to. But Bridges and Anunoby were terrible, by the way, in game 4 from an offensive perspective. Great from a defensive perspective, but they combined to go 6 for 25. The Knicks can't have that if they want to win these games. But they can when their star plays like an MVP. And I don't want to hear from all the Pistons fans and from all the NBA fans that Jalen Brunson is not the best player in this series. Jalen Brunson is the best player in this series. Jalen Brunson plays like an MVP candidate, period, full stop. He's not going to win MVP, not saying that. But you think of what Jalen Brunson's done in this series. I saw the tweet from Knicks Muse on X earlier, yesterday. First player Brunson is in NBA history in the first 4 games of the series. 130-plus points, 35-plus assists, and under 12 turnovers. In 4 total games, he's at under 12 turnovers. This is a guy who has the ball in his hand every single play. Constantly gets into the lane. Constantly drives to the basket. Maybe even pulls up for an occasional three-pointer or so. And Jalen Brunson in the fourth quarter of these games has over 50 points combined in the fourth quarter. That's a player. That's why he won the clutch player of the year in the NBA. That's a guy you want the ball with down the stretch, taking almost every shot. Now, it will kill you some games. You could argue in game 2 that Brunson did too much ISO ball at the end of the game. To me, that does not matter. When you look at Jalen Brunson as a player, and Cade Cunningham's a star. We said this. This was a series that people were going to watch, kind of like last year with Philly, and say the Sixers lost, but Tyrese Maxey became a star. Cade Cunningham has become a star in this series. I mean, you can't blame him for game 4. You have 25, 10, and 10. I mean, he's done close to his average from the regular season against the Knicks. The difference is the supporting cast hasn't been there. Tim Hardaway Jr., 14 points. Tobias Harris has had some decent games, but not great. Malik Beasley only made 3 out of 9 threes. He was the only part of the bench. Dennis Schroeder didn't do what he did in game 2. The Knicks need to make Cunningham into a passer, not a scorer. That's really been the difference. Brunson can do a little bit of everything. He can score, but when he does pass the ball, if Towns, Anunoby, and Bridges are making plays, the Knicks do have a better supporting cast. They may not have a better bench. Bench has still been inconsistent. They're still not getting points from that bench outside of campaign in game 1. And occasionally a little bit of Deuce McBride, although he only had 5 points in game 4. But the Knicks supporting cast is just better. That's the difference in this series. And we talk about everyone's going to go into the no call at the end of game 4. For those who don't know, if you're living under a rock, Cade Cunningham missed a shot at the end of regulation. Pistons got the rebound. Hardaway Jr. had a 3 that the ref said after the game it looked like Josh Hart had fouled him, would have sent Hardaway to the line for 2 free throws with 2 seconds left. Now, Hardaway in the game from the charity stripe had 1 attempt. He missed it. So who's to say that Hardaway is going to make them both anyway? And even if he does, the Knicks will have the ball with 2 seconds left with a chance to win the game. But don't start saying that the refs are fixing these games. Don't start saying that the refs are deciding these games are fouls. First off, you look at game 4, both teams had 17 fouls. Both teams had the same number of free throws. In fact, Detroit made more free throws than the Knicks did. What I would complain about is, all right, if the Piston fan is going to complain about that, the Knicks fan has every right to complain about game 2 when Josh Hart got fouled on an and 1 and the last 2-minute report came out and said that should have been a foul. Hart would have been at the line to give the Knicks the lead. And even if Schroeder hits the 3 with 40 seconds left, the Pistons are only up 2, not 3. Changes completely how you go about dialing up a play. So spare me that. We talked about the Sixers last year. I think Bickerstaff has done way too much complaining about the refs, similar to what Nick Nurse did last year. I think Nurse was whining a little bit more, but every time you watch these games, you see the shots of Bickerstaff constantly bothering the refs. I didn't like that Tibbs in game 2 after the game basically commented about the refs. The issue with officiating in this series for both sides, it's inconsistent. One game, it's let them do everything they want, hack in the paint, do all crazy physical game. That's great. Second half, then they start calling everything. It doesn't make sense. If that Hardaway shot was called the foul in the second quarter, it should be called a foul in the fourth quarter. It was not called a foul at either point in the game. So if the nature of this game was let them play, why to call something at the end that didn't really affect the shot too much? That's the issue when you look at officials. And that's why you have sites that like track which officials do these games. It shouldn't be that way. You should have consistent officiating as close as you can across the board. And officials have a tough job. I used to be one. Not the NBA, but I used to be a ref in a youth basketball league. And it's not easy. Like, I'll never be one to say that the refs are awful or anything like that. You just want the same style of game called. It seems like in this series, one game they let everything go and you get 94, 93 games, or one game they call a bunch and you get 120-point games. Like, that's really, that's the style. The officiating dictates the style of play. We said at the beginning of the series, and we had Christian on from Gritsville, USA, and that's why I said the difference in the series would be who goes to the free throw line. If this game is going to be getting to the charity stripe, you kind of like the Knicks because Jalen Brunson's going to get to the line. Brunson only had 2 free throws in game 4. Like, Pistons fans will sit there and say, well, Cunningham only had 4. Brunson only had 2. Like, that's just the way these things go. If this game, it actually benefits the Pistons if things don't get called, because the Pistons want to play physical. They want to play with grit. They want to play with a little bit more of an edge. So as the Piston fan complaining about stuff not getting called, when ideally their team wants things to get called, doesn't want things to get called. It changes. It basically puts things on a rabbit hole to me, and it's basically making excuses for a team that has a bright future, but is not quite ready to win. And you look at this series, look at the coaching matchup, and we talked about it at the beginning of the series. Tom Thibodeau, outside of his game 2 stuff with Towns, has been the better coach. Why that is? His guys are prepped to play this long. Everybody likes to complain and moan about too many minutes played by Josh Hart, too many minutes played by Jalen Brunson, too many minutes played by Bridges and Anunoby, that they're going to get themselves hurt, and they might. Again, over long playoff runs, it hasn't been proven. But for this series in particular, the Knicks have been the better fourth quarter team when it matters. Go back to game 1 and go back to game 4. Those have been the 2 decisive games in this series. I don't want to hear pissed. I saw a Gritsville site say the Pistons should have swept the Knicks, and I thought that was bogus because it discredits everything that the Knicks do as a team. The Knicks as a team are prepped for fourth quarters like this. They're prepped. When the game goes long, they are conditioned enough to go through it. It might hurt them down the line, as I just said, but it helped. And you look at Bickerstaff, you know when he could have used that challenge at the end of game 4 as opposed to using it in the first quarter. There is zero reason to use a challenge in the first quarter of a playoff game. Zero. The only, I would even say the second quarter too, we can argue maybe a guy on your star maybe picked up a third foul and you want to save it. I get it. But if you use that first challenge in the first quarter, you better be right. Because he lost that challenge, he couldn't challenge at the end of the game. When if he did challenge, he might have won it. That's why you have those options. If you leave these games in the hands of the officials, you're going to lose. More often than not. So to me, the better coach has been Tibbs. And if he wins tonight, Tom Thibodeau against J.B. Bickerstaff's teams in the last 10 playoff games would be 8-2. Players decide games. That's a stat that's hard to ignore in my mind. Very hard to ignore. So game 5 is tonight, 7:30 Eastern, MSG. If you're watching for Mike Breen and Clyde Frazier, TNT. If you're watching nationally, you're not here in New York. The broadcasting is fine. And it's something the Knicks didn't do last year. What I mean by that is clinching a series at home. They had a chance against Philly last year. The Maxey 4-point play, which should have been a travel, didn't happen. Knicks ended up losing it overtime. did respond to win Game 6 in Philly when everybody thought that series was definitely going back to the Garden for Game 7. And you hope, even though this is DiVincenzo's gone and Julius Randle is gone, and by the way, give them credit, Minnesota's up 3-1 on the Lakers. So both those teams that made that kind of trade might benefit from it in some way, shape, or form. But the Knicks have a chance to clinch at home, which would be an insane thing at the Garden. I saw there was a site that said the cheapest ticket was $420 for tonight. That's how big this game is. And you want to win this game because it gives you maximum rest. You look at the rest of the series right now, or the rest of these postseason, the Knicks would play the Celtics. The Celtics are up 3-1. They play tonight against the Magic at 8:30 on NBA TV. So you want to be able to get it. That East playoffs is going to start this weekend. You want the maximum matchups because Cleveland's already in. They swept the Heat. Pacers have a chance to close out the Bucks tonight. That's 6 o'clock on NBA TV. Knicks have a chance to close out the Pistons. Celtics have a chance to close out the Magic. We might know the second round of the East by the end of the night. So you might get that series. They might wait a couple of days, but you might get game one, let's say, to be Saturday. If all things go right. The Knicks can't afford, because if they lose this game, Game 6 is Thursday in Detroit, and now you might be looking at you lose a couple of rest days that you desperately need. Because you want to have no rest advantages for Boston, especially because you can't sweep the Celtics as is, because the Celtics beat you every time this year. So you can't have that happen in any of these situations. And, of course, our Beantown Sports Pound host, Brian Francione, is here. Thank you for hopping in, Brian. Yeah, I think, look, the Celtics have played well. Orlando, I think, you look at the Magic, it's been a gritty series for them. What the problem for Orlando is they don't have enough scoring. Their defense is good, but they have a long way to go to beat the defending champs. Knicks will have a long way as well if they get by this series, because Boston's got more scoring than New York. You take away Jason Tatum, there's Jaylen Brown. You take away Jaylen Brown, there's Derek White. You take away Derek White, there's the Kristaps Porzingis. You take away Porzingis, Al Horford shows up. Like, we've seen that. The Knicks should be game planned. The irony of it is they were built to beat the Celtics, and they haven't done it once. Celtics were 10 games better than the Knicks in the regular season. Again, we'll preview all this stuff in the second round, and maybe we'll do a show with Brian, a special show if that happens. But to me, I think when you look at the Knicks right now, to win the game tonight, go out there, play a great 48 minutes, get ahead early, take the Pistons out of it. You're not going to have a game like last night where Cleveland beats Miami 138-83? You can't expect that. But go out there and try to make sure the Pistons don't feel like they're in this series. Because if you do, that spells trouble, especially going back to Detroit in Game 6, because you can't expect to win 3 straight games on the road. So we'll see. But props to the Knicks getting it done. Good grit out in Detroit. Let us take our first break. We'll come back. We'll talk NFL draft. Giants, highly regarded as one of the better drafts in the league. The Jets, not a great one, but a solid one. We'll dive into those picks and dive into, of course, all the Shedeur Sanders stuff, because the Giants were directly, not affected by it, but there was a story involving the Giants that relates to Shedeur. You're listening to New York State of Sports, Night Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. We'll be right back after this.
Are you a Tar Heel, Blue Devil, Demon Deacon, or maybe even a Gamecock? Do you cheer for the Panthers, the Canes, the Crown? And check out the Carolina Sports Update every week with me, Neil Curtis, to get the latest and greatest on all the sports action in the Carolinas. We'll be talking pro sports, ACC and SEC football, basketball, baseball, and everything in between. We'll even talk a little Formula One racing now and again. So, for the best hour of Carolina sports coverage, catch me each week on Carolina Sports Updates with Neil Curtis. right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, everybody? This is Darren Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We move over from the hardwood to the gridiron. The 2025 NFL Draft took place over the weekend in Green Bay. A great fan atmosphere. Next year it goes to Pittsburgh, so I think it should be great out there. If you missed any portion of our draft coverage, of course, we had a great 3-and-out post-draft show. We did almost 4 hours. Myself, Ralph Calise, Mike Pat, and Larry B. covered every team's picks. So if you're a fan of any NFL team, that's going to be something you want to tune into. It was a lot of fun. We had a great time. And we talked about it on the show that the Giants had one of the better drafts in the league. Now, I said on the show that if it's Joe Shane's last draft, it might turn out to be one of his better ones. If we kind of look back at Dave Gettleman, not a great career, but he drafted Saquon, drafted some of the pieces like a Dexter Lawrence that have helped. So you can have a mixed bag as a GM and still have some pieces in the draft that lead to success. And it starts to think at the top of Abdul Carter going number 3. There's a home run move. I mean, look, the Giants were never going to take quarterback at 3, as much as some people would have wanted them to. I made the argument at times that I think they should have, at least earlier in the process. But to me, when you can get a premier pass rusher, and the Giants announced after the draft that they were picking up Kayvon Thibodeau's 5th-year option. So to have Carter, to have Thibodeau, to have Brian Burns as pass rushers, it benefits you. So Carter, despite the foot issues during the draft process, if he's healthy, he is probably the best player in this class. If it's not him, it's Travis Hunter. But so he's second. That's the kind of player he is. Now, the one thing I wish he didn't do was try to go for Lawrence Taylor's number. Now, I think that's where Carter has to understand where history is. Like, I'll give you an example. Cam Ward didn't go out and ask Tennessee to give him Warren Moon's number. You had the ceremony over the weekend where Warren Moon came to the press conference and gave Cam Ward the number. Lawrence Taylor's never going to give up the number, nor should he. That's entirely up to him. So for Abdul Carter to kind of make that move without playing it down in the NFL, I don't really know if that was smart. Can he have a Lawrence Taylor-like impact? He's going to be expected to, especially after trying to do that. Time will tell, but I think that was the right pick. So everybody was waiting for the Giants to find their quarterback. Where are they going to trade up? You had Joe Shane's son posting highlight videos of Jackson Dart on his Instagram. And the Giants did make the move. They trade up to 25 with the Houston Texans. Once the Steelers didn't take a quarterback, the Giants kind of realized that was their opportunity. They give up a couple of picks and a 3rd rounder next year, which is not a bad asking price. You think about the Giants and the draft capital they had 5 picks in the top 100. So they had the draft equity to spend some of that draft this year and only give up a day 2 pick next year instead of having to give up their 1, which they might need. and they get Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. Now, I first dismissed this pick at the beginning. Not that I think Dart's going to be a bad player. I don't really like it. Just reeks of 6 degrees of separation from Eli Manning. It reeks of I got an Ole Miss guy because Eli's an Ole Miss guy. And I'm tired of making comparisons to Eli when Giants draft quarterbacks. Like, to me, I'd rather look at the quarterback independently. And when I look at Jackson Dart, I think he's a developmental project. Doesn't mean I don't think he can be good. The best thing for Dart this year is to not see the field at all. If he does, maybe it's like the last 2-3 games of the year. Because when you look at an Ole Miss offense with Lane Kiffin, you watch Dart, and he's good being a mobile quarterback, but when he doesn't get his first read, he quickly runs. That's something he's going to have to work on. Brian Daboll might be the best coach for that. But when I heard Sal Paolantonio had the report, I think, before the draft, that Jackson Dart had Josh Allen traits, I'm like, are we saying that because we truly believe Jackson Dart is Josh Allen? Or are we saying that because Brian Daboll coached Josh Allen? That's where I get confused. Doesn't mean, and you listen to Daboll and Shane over the weekend, that Dart is very competitive. He wants to win at everything, which is great. I think you want guys like that. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Dart is not going to be a good pro. I think he could be a good pro. I mean, but he's going to have a great quarterback to learn from. We said it throughout the process that learning from Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, guys who have gone through up and downs in their NFL career, is probably one of the better quarterback rooms, I think, in the league. Because you have guys that have experienced everything. So to me, Dart would be the pick. And we talk about the Shador stuff. There was a report, I think it was in the New York Daily News. Was it not? Was it Daily News? It was Todd McShay had also talked about it as well. That Brian Daboll had met with Shador Sanders and he was not happy that Shador didn't come prepared when he had questions about an install and things like that. And it kind of beats to Shador and why he dropped in the draft. And I said in the NFL draft show real quick, just to talk about something that isn't Giants, I think Shador benefits the 5th round pick. This doesn't change. Now, he's got to fix the interview stuff. I was shocked he fell in the 5th round, and it wasn't that I was shocked he got picked in day 2. I got shocked. Wasn't he shocked that he didn't get picked in round 1? It said he didn't get picked on day 2. And at the Browns, who did pick him in the beginning in round 5, took Dylan Gabriel instead early. And when I saw Gabriel get picked over Sanders when I'm watching the draft, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, that made me think, well, what the heck's going on in this process? So you got to trust the Giants here to some degree. They were the team that did the most homework on Sanders. They were at every game. They had all these meetings with him, East-West Shrine, combines, pro days, workouts. They did everything. If they feel it wasn't the best fit, we'll see. And maybe Shador didn't help himself to that degree. It's ultimately up to him to make that pick a mistake. But Jackson Dart, who's been in the SEC, he hasn't played great against teams in the SEC. But he's had his moments. And again, the best thing for him this year is to not see the field. But if Brian Daboll might want to save his job, maybe he gets Jackson Dart out there later in the season to show, hey, I can develop this guy. But Daboll and Shane finally get their quarterback. That's really the story. And now they'll get a chance to kind of mold their guy into what they want him to be. But going on into the draft, the Giants then get Darius Alexander, the defensive tackle from Toledo, in round 3. Remember, they added Chauncey Golston in free agency. They added Roy Robertson Harris in free agency. Alexander's a really good run defender. And you put him with Dexter Lawrence in that defensive line, this is a player that could have been a 2nd-round pick. And the Giants get him at the top of round 3. Very solid pick. You look at then in round 4, taking Cam Scatterbo from Arizona State. Steal of the draft. One of the steals of the draft. Because now you have a 1-2 combo with Scatterbo and Tracy. And you watch Arizona State football this year, Scatterbo was the guy. Like, he literally did everything in that offense. Literally almost single-handedly willed them to a win over Texas in the playoff. Like, that's how good he can be. He can catch the ball to the backfield. He's physical. He gets those power runs that you need. And you pair him with Tracy, it's a really pretty good one, too, in the NFC. It's got a lot of room to grow, but the Giants now have a solid running back room. Where Devin Singletary is your RB3 right now. Like, there are options the Giants have, and Scatterboo, I think, could easily make an impact year one on this offense because they need playmakers. Scatterboo's a playmaker. May not be a wide receiver, but he's a playmaker. In round 5, they get Marcus Embu from Purdue, the guard. Now, he had some medical concerns during the process, but Giants need depth in the offensive line, and you take a guy that has blocked for Tracy before. Not a bad pick. They get Thomas Fedone in the 7th round out of Nebraska, tight end that had some injuries, but a good pass catcher. And then they add depth at corner in their final pick, 246. They take Corey Black, which I thought was out of Oklahoma State. But overall, if you go to Mel Kiper or Todd McShay or Field Yates, they've got the Giants in one of the better drafts. That doesn't mean you always win. Like, we're not going to know about these picks until 2 or 3 years down the road. But for right now, if you look at the process and Joe Shane handled the board, and you got to be very impressed with the fact that it seemed telegraphed that the Jets were going to get, not the Jets, the Giants were going to get Jackson Dart, and Joe Shane was still able to get him without giving up a lot of equity. Because people said the Rams wanted him, but think about it. The Rams end up getting a first-round pick for next year from Atlanta. I don't know. They would have stuck with the pick if that was the guy, I think, who they wanted and couldn't get a first-rounder back in return. So, and the Rams think help themselves. They get 2 ones next year when the draft class is arguably better. You look at the Jets, on the other hand, and as I've said, the Jets draft isn't great, but it's not bad. I think it's a solid draft. It starts at 7, of course, with Armand Membu from Missouri. The Jets make the decision to stick to the offensive line. They've spent a lot of draft capital in the offensive line with Vera Tucker, with Tippmann, Fashanu. And they've got a chance to grow together as a unit. And I think two years down the road, that could be a really strong offensive line. So Jets end up going there. And then they go tight end in round 2, because people will say they should have took Loveland, they should have took Warren. But they go with Mason Taylor, 6'5", 251. Good pass catcher. Could work on his run blocking a little bit. This guy with 55 catches last year, had 16 catches more than the year prior. Nick Saban had glowing words for him. Matt Miller from ESPN compares him to a Zach Ertz. And it was very emotional draft for him. Remember, Mason Taylor is the son of Jason Taylor. Everyone knows Taylor from the Dolphins, but he spent some time with the Jets toward the end of his career. And look, when you look at Taylor and Jeremy Ruckert, that could be a decent tight end combo, because the Jets had to replace the production from Tyler Conklin to some degree, and they do that with Mason Taylor. So overall, not a bad pick there, and the Jets at least add some offense into the mix. In round 3, they go with the corner, Azaria Thomas from Florida State. Not a lot of speed, but does do a good job in terms of getting to the ball, making plays. He has seen guys he watched, he compares himself to, not compares himself, but he looks up to a guy like Sauce Gardner. Jets need to get some help at corner, especially after losing DJ Reed in free agency. So let's see what Thomas can do. He's one of those taller guys that's very good in press coverage, so you take that. They take Arian Smith in round 4, the wide receiver out of Georgia. Good speed. Doesn't catch the ball very well, but maybe he's a hopeful guy in special teams. So they can work on maybe fixing those pass catching situations. And then they take Malachi Moore. They make a trade, the safety out of Alabama. So again, another guy good in secondary, good at tracking the ball. I think you take that. And then the 5th round, a couple defensive guys from Miami, which maybe not the best things here. Miami's defense wasn't good this year. They take Francisco Mauigoa from Miami. Had 11 tackles for loss last year. And Tyler Barron, he's an edge rusher, was at Tennessee the year prior, but was tied for the team lead in sacks this past year. So he's a guy that can maybe help along the edge and be some depth for the Jets as far as an edge rusher goes. But ultimately, Aaron Glenn gets guys that fit into what he wants to do, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And again, you look at this process, Last year, it was kind of like, do you take Vashanu or do you take Bowers? The Jets selected to take offensive line. This time, again, same thing. Take offensive line, or do you take Loveland or Warren? They end up taking the offensive line. They do at least address tight end. We'll see if Mason Taylor lives up to Loveland and Warren's potential, which I would have loved to see what Justin Fields would do with those guys. But overall, not a bad thing. And like I said, if you're going to grade the Jets draft, it's kind of like a B. Some good picks, but not the home run pick. The home run pick, I think, is probably, if it's not Membu, it's Taylor. But I'm really intrigued by Thomas and what he can do, because even Glenn said it's not necessarily about speed at the cornerback position. Maybe he does a good job with that man-to-man press coverage, and it works from there. So now these Jet players and Giant players will have rookie mini camp and all those things. We'll get to see them in action over the next few weeks. There was an intriguing Jet, an undrafted free agent I actually liked. They added Donovan Edwards from Michigan, guy who played well in the national championship a couple of years ago. He's a running back. Remember, running back depth was so deep in this draft. Commandant guy from Rutgers got picked by the Bears in the 7th round. He could have been a 4th, 5th rounder in other drafts. But he ends up dropping because of the depth. But a non-guy was a good pick. And they add Brady Cook, quarterback from Missouri. So they do address quarterback, just they don't take a quarterback in the draft. Brady Cook, though, had some good moments at Missouri, and we'll see if he develops at all over the course of minicamp and training camp if he can make the roster, especially with the injury to Jordan Travis. So we'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk some hockey. Devils on the verge of elimination. Rangers maybe on the verge of a new head coach. And the Islanders, well, they're nowhere near a GM and president, and they may not be near a coach. We'll talk all about that next on New York State Sports 90 Sports Radio, your direct feed for all this sports. We'll talk NHL after this.
Hockey fans, I'm Adam Kernick.
And I'm Zach Puplis.
Together, we are the newest version of Hockey Talk on IE Sports Radio, The Neutral Zone.
Zone.
We love hockey, but we also know it's not everyone's first sport. So we want to make this show as much for new fans as for the diehards.
Whether you can name all the Swedes on the 08 Red Wings Stanley Cup team, or if you can't tell if Varlamov is a goalie or the latest trendy vodka, we're here to help. With facts, figures, and outrageous fans, we bring you all the hard-hitting hockey news you can handle, while still keeping it fun and on the rails. Well, mostly.
So tune in every week as we go around the hockey world, from college to Canada, the minors and the majors, and everywhere in between.
So bring your cellies,
And your one-timers,
you wicked wristas.
and be sure to protect your 5-hole.
Catch the Neutral Zone every week on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
We promise not to pick on the Arizona Coyotes every episode.
What's up, Pittsburgh? This is Ralph DeLeese, the host of the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you that passionate diehard Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, or just a Pittsburgh sports fan? Then please join me on the Injury Report every Tuesday on IE Sports Radio, the direct feed for all that is sports, and I will update you on all that's black and gold, and have you telling your Pittsburgh fans and friends what's up with Pittsburgh sports. Tune in Tuesday with me, Ralph DeLeese, the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go!
And welcome back to New York State of Sports and High Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Ricky K here with you as we get set to move over to the NHL, where we'll talk about the Devils, who are bordering on elimination. And it's not shocking. I don't think anybody, we look at this Devils-Carolina series, Carolina's been the better team all year long. They've been the more consistent team all year long. And I think a Devil fan would tell you that I wish this team played this series with Jack Hughes. Because when you look at the Devils, and Ralph said that the Devils, he thinks the Devils will get eliminated tonight. I think so as well. You look at the Devils this series, and the problem for them has been their offense, and they're just not getting consistency from guys that aren't their top guys. Their top guys have played very well. Nico Hischier has had a few goals. Jesper Bratt had the first goal in game 2, only for Carolina to score 2 goals very quickly in the second period. Timo Meier, I think, has played well, even though he took a lot of flack for running into Frederik Andersen toward the middle of game 4. Andersen ended up leaving the game, and I think that hurt it was shocking how much it didn't help the Devils, because you got a cold goaltender in Kochetkov for the third, and they couldn't really do anything against him after almost coming back from 3 goals down. Carolina led 3-0 early in game 4. Looked, the Devils were dead, and then they scored 2 quick goals to get back in it. Just nothing else there. So when you scored 7 goals and 5 are from your top 3 guys, you're only going to beat Carolina if you got scoring from secondary players. Like, you look at Carolina in this series, and they're getting scoring from all over the place. Andrei Svechnikov had a hat trick in game 4. He has 4 goals. Seth Jarvis has come alive with a couple of goals. Sebastian Aho has 5 points, including 4 assists in this series. Logan Stankoven had 2 goals in game 1. They had the first goal in game 1 from Jalen Chatfield. You look at the Hurricanes in this series, if you go by points, they have 5 players with 3 or more points. If you extend that down to guys with 2 points, that's about 10 players on their team that have had multiple points in this series. There's more depth there. The Devils don't have it. Unless Jonas Markstrom is going to stand on his head and decide this series, that was really one of the only chances they had to make this series. Now, they played great in game 3. Simon Nemec with a goal in double overtime, so at least you'll have something on the Devils' playoff things to look back on, and that was a really fun game, and Markstrom made some clutch saves in those overtimes. Especially when it looked like the Devils were going to lose that game. They were down at the first 2 periods. Carolina rallied back to tie it in the third, only for that to happen where the Devils end up having to go to overtime. But they do still win the game. So we'll see what happens tonight. Game 5, 7:30 Eastern, TBS, MSGSN. If the Devils do pull off the win tonight, Game 6 would be Friday at the Prudential Center. And that'd be big. If the Devils win tonight, going back home with a little bit of momentum, but they're going to need other guys to step up and score. Where's Stefan Noesen? Where's Dawson Mercer? Where is guys like Palat, who have been maybe not the best player than he was years ago, but he's played well in playoff games in the past. They're going to have to get a power play goal or 2. They've struggled there. Carolina has done a much better job. And if you watch the Hurricanes in this series, they might not look great early, and then they get that 2-3 minute stretch of just peppering shots and just continually coming at the Devils. It's something we've seen against the Islanders last year, against the Rangers for a little bit in these kind of series. They're a really quick, fast-paced group, and I just don't think the Devils have the guys to necessarily match up with that. But if they do lose tonight, again, it's tough to really take anything away from Sheldon Keefe in year 1. And again, you're always going to have the what would have happened if Jack Hughes was there. But it also, maybe not having Hughes kind of still says maybe the Devils, who addressed a lot of defensive issues last year in the offseason, maybe now look to add another key scorer or 2 over the course of the summer. So that's going to be something to monitor. Meanwhile, the other 2 New York teams going through their own controversies of their own. We talked about the Rangers and looking for a head coach. They're not going to be looking for a new GM because Chris Drury gets an extension. Now, that was very puzzling because, again, I've been the biggest Chris Drury critic on this show. To get the chance to pick a third coach in the last 4 years, I think is ridiculous. But at the same time, it also shows James Dolan is saying, hey, Chris Drury's the guy here, whether the players like it or not. Now, does Chris Drury have to improve his communication skills? Absolutely. He's got to improve the way he communicates with the players. Maybe he doesn't have to communicate completely, but you look at an example of there's the report from the Pittsburgh Penguins that the GM, Kyle Dubas, reached out to Sidney Crosby to let Crosby know they were going to get rid of Mike Sullivan. I don't see Chris Drury doing that with the guys talking about the Jacob Trouba stuff and the Barclay Goodrow stuff, but you're letting your star know what's going on before he's blindsided by social media and all these things. And in a day and age where everything is on social media and players can find out before you tell them, you have to be more upfront with the players. You might not like that as a fan, but that's just the way it is right now. And Chris Drury's got to be that, because Chris Drury doesn't hit with this hire, he's gone. He should be gone. He doesn't. He'll get a chance to tweak this roster the way he wants to, or any way he can, especially with all those big players on no movement deals. But to me, that's going to be, hey, this is Chris Drury's last chance, but it's clear Dolan believes in him. But we'll see if that ends up being right. Now, they're looking for that coach, and they might have caught a break yesterday. When it came out Monday morning that the Penguins were parting ways with Mike Sullivan, it instantly became, he's got to be the next Rangers coach. Because Mike Sullivan's been a guy the Rangers have wanted for years, and a guy a lot of NHL fans have wanted for their team for years. He was with the Penguins for 10 years, won a couple of Stanley Cups, was coach for Team USA, did it in the Four Nations, came in second this past year. And I think you look at Mike Sullivan, a guy who's drafted by the Rangers, never played for them, but was an assistant with the Rangers from 2009 to 2013. He's been here before. He's a winner. And he kind of can be a no-nonsense guy as well, though he's not quite the no-nonsense guy the Torts is. But you kind of need a guy that has a track record with this team. As much as we said last week, experience versus first time, and it's not that big a deal. If you're going to keep this core in place and tweak it and not blow it up, then Mike Sullivan's probably the guy to get the last bit out of this roster. We thought Peter Laviolette would be the guy to get the last minutes out of this roster. But that ended up being happening. They fired him for 2 years. Mike Sullivan's not a guy, if I'm bringing him in, I'm not firing him after 2 years. He's going to want a ton of money, because you look at all the options that he has at his disposal. The Bruins are out there. The Blackhawks are out there. Could Anaheim give him a lot of money to make him the coach? He's going to command a ton of money. Like, I'm reading Larry Brooks today and talking about maybe like a 5-year, $7.5 million a year kind of coach. That's what he is. And you look at what the Pittsburgh Penguins GM, Kyle Dubas, said about him. Mike's known for his preparation, focus, and fierce competitiveness. I was fortunate to have a front row seat to his dedication to this franchise for the past 2 seasons. He'll forever be an enormous part of Penguins history, not only for the impressive back-to-back cups, but his impact on the core of Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, and Brian Rust, but more importantly, his love and loyalty to the organization. And the Penguins right now are going through that phase where they do want to move on and kind of rebuild things. Rangers aren't. Chris Drury's known Sullivan for years. They both went to Boston University together. Drury was the assistant GM for Team USA when Sullivan was the coach. So it's clear that's the guy Chris Drury wants. Maybe Chris Drury tried to get him years ago when they hired Gerard Gallant. That's been their plan A for a long time. And you heard there was a report today from Frank Saravelli that said there could be a new Ranger coach by the end of this week. And if that's the case, it's hard. If Mike Sullivan wants the job, it's going to be his. There's not going to be this long process. And I think a lot of Ranger fans would have wanted to see, hey, who's interested in this job? Which guys are going to come in for a different thing. But if this is Chris Drury's show, and the Rangers have made it known it's Chris Drury's show, he's got to get this right. Mike Sullivan is probably the closest thing to a home run hire in this process that you could get. Fans will have their critiques of it, but I think it's the most perfect hire with the least amount of questions. Speaking of a team that has questions, let's talk Islanders. And you look at the decision the Islanders made over the last week to part ways with President Lou Lamoriello. And look, you got to give Lou a lot of credit, being that he took the Islanders. He was with them for 7 years. He gets them to the playoffs 5 times. That's a guy that deserves a lot of credit. He's a guy who's been known for a track record here in the tri-state area, the great work he did with the Devils. But it was time. The Islanders have to go a different direction because Lou wanted, and there was the reports that Lou wanted more defensive oriented, and Patrick Waugh is a more offensive oriented coach. So if you already have differences between the GM and the coach, it's not really great. And the Islanders have already moved on from coaches left and right in the past. There's a lot of disconnects there. So now the question is going to be who you bring in as GM. We're looking at the assistant GM of the Devils, Kate Madigan. I think was one they were looking to bring in. There was a report she was going to get an interview. Do they look to keep it in-house and go with somebody who's been recently retired, like a Thomas Hickey, like a Kyle Clutterbuck? There's been also rumors maybe of a veteran GM, a guy like a Ken Holland. They could look to bring in. I've seen another name floated out there. People have been wanting to see if this would happen. Someone like Kevin Weeks, who's been around the league. He works in television, kind of knows the process. Would that be somebody they look to kind of bring into the mix? We'll see. There's a lot of different ways they can go. And with Scott Malkin running this, and he's not really the biggest hockey guy, you're going to get a variety of different names. This process is going to take a while. Guys like Mark Bergevin, who's assistant GM with the Kings. You have Kevin McDonald, who is now the assistant GM in Colorado. Ryan Martin, if you want to stay local, think about it. With Chris Drury now locked in as the GM with the extension, do they now go to Ryan Martin, who was an assistant GM at the Red Wings and is the assistant GM for Drury? Does Martin say, hey, I got to move on, and I need another spot? What also didn't help the Islanders is their minor league system wasn't great. Bridgeport was terrible in the AHL this year. So you have to wonder, does any president that comes in or GM comes in, are they going to blow it up, or are they going to try to last one more year? Barzal's got a tough contract. It's not easy to move. Bo Horvat's got a tough contract. It's not easy to move. They've already made the move with Brock Nelson at the deadline. Do they look to move from Kyle Palmieri? The Islanders are the ones that I think they have to try to contend because I think the teardown is a lot tougher. They're 10th in the lottery right now. That's Monday. The Rangers are 11th. But they have to decide if they're going to forfeit this year's first rounder or next year's first rounder with the Penguins. But this is going to be a really difficult decision for Scott Malkin and that ownership group. And especially because if you're bringing a GM, is that GM aligned with Patrick Waugh, or does it not align with Patrick Waugh? And if it doesn't, now you're looking for a new coach again. And I don't know if that really makes sense. And Ralph thinks the Islanders need a young, hockey-minded new GM. So, Ralph, you're still here. I'll ask you because you're the Islander fan here. What name do you want? Are you looking for a GM that's going to keep Patrick Waugh? That's the thing. Is the new GM tying to a new coach? I think that's what fans always wonder. And Ralph said the same thing I said. He feels the Rangers will go hard after Mike Sullivan. It's hard not to think that. I think that's the guy they've wanted the entire time through this process. Very short process, by the way. So maybe we'll see by our next show. We'll be profiling Mike Sullivan as the next head coach of the New York Rangers. Coming up next, we'll talk some baseball. The Mets are the first team to 20 wins in the sport. And Brandon Nimmo had himself one of the more historic days in baseball history yesterday. Yankees still in first place, but some issues in the bullpen. We'll dive into both New York baseball teams coming up next on New York State Sports and iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey, sports fans. Are you in the market for Florida sports or just keeping up with the latest in the Panhandle? Palm Tree Sports is a dedicated audio hub to all things sports in the Sunshine State. We cover current events, big news, heavily favored opinions all across the NFL, NBA, MLB, and so much more. So come check us out every Saturday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a down south education on Florida sports and athletics. It's hosted by yours truly, Corey Pujols, and is powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No. Not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide for your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
And welcome back to New York State Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's talk some baseball. And the New York Mets, the first team in all Major League Baseball to 20 wins. They are 20-9 on the season. Coming off a split against the Nats after they'd won 7 in a row. They swept the Phillies last week, including a walk-off hit from Starling Marte in the 10th inning on Wednesday. Mets have kind of made a statement against the Phillies. They've won 6 of their last 7 against Philly, dating back to the postseason last year. So they've clearly established themselves right now as the best team in the East. And it starts with Brandon Nimmo, who had a huge game yesterday. He goes 4 for 6, hits 2 home runs, drives in 9. The last guy to do that with the Mets was Carlos Delgado. In terms of total bases, Nimmo in this one had 11 total bases. Haven't seen that since Ohtani last year. So that's kind of day Nimmo had. Jeff McNeil had a home run in the 5th. The Mets in total had 17 runs after the 4th inning yesterday. Like, that's how explosive this offense can be. And Juan Soto didn't drive in any of those runs. Like that's the amazing part to me with this Mets team is they've won a chance to win 21 of their first 30 tonight. And Juan Soto hasn't really been the takeoff guy. It's been Pete Alonso. It's been Mark Vientos starting to heat up. He went 2 for 4 and drove in 3 yesterday. Francisco Alvarez is back. He had 2 hits. Jeff McNeil, 2 hits, including a home run, drove in 3. Luis Angel Acuna went 3 for 6 yesterday. And the Mets made the decision to send Brett Beatty down, but it was probably the right move because Beatty's got to play every day. He wasn't going to play every day here. And you have a Met team that from a well-rounded lineup when you've got everybody hitting the way they do. And think about it. They had 19 hits. They had 19 runs, 21 hits yesterday. The only guy to not have a hit yesterday, Lindor. Like, that speaks to the potential this team has from an offensive perspective. And look, they had a rough week in D.C. Their bullpen blew a couple of games. Ryan Stanek didn't have a great week. Mets had a 7-1 lead Sunday. Blew that one. They had a lead Friday. James Wood walked them off. But think about how the Mets, despite 2 tough losses, won the next day. Like, that's a good resilience from this team. And the Mets starters are doing a really good job of keeping their team in the game. The starting pitchers have yet to allow more than 4 earned runs in any start this year. Now, you can complain about innings pitched and things like that. Like Griffin Canning only goes 5 innings yesterday. Those 90 pitches, because he has 3 walks, but he doesn't allow a run. Now, the Mets are kind of hit with some injuries and workload to the point where Jose Urena got the save yesterday, but he's got to go down, maybe go down because of something like that. The Mets have to make a move to call up a starter today because of that. But they've been able to get enough from their starters and sometimes even more from their starters to make moves. Like, you look at the last few days. You go to Sunday, the game that got away from them. Tyler McGill did a pretty good job. 6 in the 3rd, 3 runs, 3 hits, walked the batter, struck out 9. McGill's had 19 strikeouts in the last 2 games. he has been a much different pitcher. When he's your 3 starter or your 4 starter, that's a very deep rotation. Clay Holmes against the Nationals on Saturday, 5 innings, allows 4 hits. Doesn't allow a run. Now, he only threw 70 pitches, but again, you're playing the long game with Clay Holmes to try to get him through the year. That's not a bad thing to have. So overall, I kind of really like where the Mets are at this point. They did get a split, which, again, you look at it, could have been 3 out of 4 if you get one of those other 2 games. But as we get into May, we're not quite yet there in terms of we're going to start analyzing standings, but they're in a much better position because you have so many questions with the Phillies. Braves are starting to come back into play a little bit. Their schedule's also gotten easier. The Nationals you've seen it can be pesky, and the Marlins are pesky as well. But it starts tonight. The Mets are taking on the Diamondbacks. First of 3 at Citi Field. They will play the Cardinals then at Busch Stadium over the weekend. It is at Battle of Lefties tonight. Eduardo Rodriguez against David Peterson. On Wednesday, it will be, pull up Wednesday, Corbin Burns is going to be on the mound for Arizona. We don't know yet who's going to pitch on Wednesday. It's to be determined. And then Thursday, it's Zach Gallen against Kodai Senga. Zach Gallen's been 1-4 with a 5 ERA so far this year. Burns has been much better. Corbin Burns might go through a whole month without winning a game for the Diamondbacks. But you got to consider Arizona. They're over 500, and their best starters are combined 1-5. I think you take that. So that should be a really fun series. Good chance to see where Arizona's at. They're 4th in the West, but in any other division, they would be toward the top because of how stacked the National League is. Mets right now have one of the best run differentials in baseball at plus 50. Like, you look at the National League, there are only 6 teams with a negative run differential in the National League. So there's a lot of runs scored out there. So the Mets are doing their thing, and we'll see if they keep that up against the Diamondbacks. Right now, they are ahead of the Phillies. Phillies are 15-13. Braves are 13-15. You go to the Yankees. They are taking on the Orioles. Last night, rough one for Will Warren. He got out of a jam in the first inning and still couldn't get out of the 4th. Yankees fought back, but they ended up falling short 4-3 against the Orioles. Sugano was excellent against them. Just not their night. They had chances late in the 8th inning to tie it. Jason Dominguez struck out. Oswaldo Cabrera grounded out. Just not there for the Yankees against an Oriole team that's going to be a little bit desperate in this series. They're 11-17. They're not getting much right now. We'll talk about that more tonight on Bullpen Bulletin because Mike Pat hosts our Let's Whine About DMV show. Baltimore right now, Charlie Morton's been nothing. And this is really a chance for the Yankees to kind of really distance themselves from Baltimore to a degree. Look, but it's hard to complain much about the Yankees. They're 17-12. Win tonight, you win 18 of your first 30. I think anybody would sign up for that. They haven't been swept in a series yet this year. They were able to avoid the sweep in Cleveland with a good performance from Carlos Rodon, and they got some offense early. They responded after losing the game Friday by sweeping the doubleheader Sunday. Now, I don't know why there was a doubleheader Sunday. They canceled the game because of inclement weather. The inclement weather didn't come, at least here, me in New Jersey. It didn't come until about 7 o'clock. So they could have tried to get the game in. I don't know why, especially when if it was a National League team, I would get that. But they played against the Giants this year in a downpour and miserable conditions. I don't understand why you would cancel a Saturday afternoon game so early. Maybe if you said there was rain, you wanted to push it back to 3 or 4. You could have, but nevertheless, the Yankees did get a sweep. Max Fried was good. Yankees put up 11 runs for him. J.C. Escarra hit his first Major League homer in Game 2. The Yankees got to Chris Bassett a little bit. Trent Grisham went deep in the first inning. He's been hitting more leadoff for them, and that's been a big boost. Paul Goldschmidt continues to hit the ball well. I'm still concerned with some of the things in this lineup. Anthony Volpe's starting to come alive again. Got an RBI double last night. I'm still very concerned the Jazz batting like 170 is not doing his thing right now, and the Yankees continually hit Jazz and Volpe together. That's got to stop because they're not getting productive at bats. Ben Rice has hit the ball well at the number 3 spot. At least the Yankees have started to move Cody Bellinger down. Cody Bellinger's been a bust. Now, he's been good defensively. We talked about it the last couple of weeks, but offensively just isn't there. And I think he'll find it, but that's going to be the thing. Now, the question for the Yankees is third base. Cabrera's been okay. Peraza hasn't been what you wanted, so maybe they'll get some help. DJ LeMahieu's been rehabbing at AA. He has looked really good on his rehab assignment. He's going to go to AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre to rehab, and maybe by the end of the week, you might see LeMahieu back in the Bronx. I'm not expecting him to be an impact guy, but if he can help third base a little bit, both offensively and defensively, you sign up for that. The Yankees could use any productivity at third base they can get because it's been a really tough go to get any consistent production there. But the big story, of course, is Devin Williams. Devin Williams came in Friday night, faced 3 batters, didn't get an out. And Aaron Boone, who's usually been so quick to not support players, but get the players back, you could tell in his post-game comments Friday that he had enough for now. Now, that doesn't mean Devin Williams isn't going to be the guy again this year. I think the Yankees, if they're going to go that far and get to a World Series again, it's because Devin Williams is locked down with Luke Weaver at the end of the game. Fortunately for the Yankees, unlike last year, they have Luke Weaver that has experience saving games and has been really good. They can make this move. They didn't make the move with Clay Holmes a year ago because they had no other options. At least now with Williams, you can get him in some low leverage and try to figure it out, because you could tell with his fastball and his changeup, nothing was there. The body language, he looked shaken. He's never gone through anything like this before. He's had a tough time adjusting to New York so far. He's been okay. He's been good with the media, but it's probably an adjustment period for him for sure. And I think to maybe say, hey, take a second, get your stuff right, get your mentality right. That's a good thing to do because they have the bullpen guys in place. The bullpen's been good. Mark Leiter's done some good things. Ian Hamilton's done some good things. Tim Hill's still been good. And their longmen have done a really good job. I mean, look at Ryan Yarbrough last night. Did a good job keeping the Yankees in the game. The other night, only having to use De Los Santos at another guy because the 27th man, Max Fried, saving the bullpen on occasion. So the bullpen's been used a lot. Luke Weaver, though, has been the one constant with this group. And I still think Devin Williams is going to find it. One of these guys is a lost cause. And I like that the Yankees kind of showed urgency. Last year, they didn't show that urgency with Holmes before eventually making the move. And now, at least here in April, they're saying, hey, we can't keep losing games with him doing this. They lost the game in Pittsburgh that Williams struggled in extras. They lost the game against Tampa at Stuyvesant Field and they had a 4-run lead. They lost Friday against Toronto. That's essentially 3 games that Williams has lost in this year out of 12. That's not including almost losing opening day. That's not including some of the tightrope situations he's been in this year. There just hasn't been that same dominance, and you wonder if mentally he's still feeling the Pete Alonso stuff. That's always a question. Yankees are still in Baltimore. They'll play there through Wednesday. Carlos Rodon gets a start tonight against Kyle Gibson, who makes his 2025 debut. That is a 6:30 first pitch. And then tomorrow at 6:30 is Carlos Carrasco against Cade Povich. Both guys are an ERA over 5, so you might get a lot of offense in that one. Yankees are then home to Tampa Bay for 3 at the stadium. It's Giancarlo Stanton Jedi Bobblehead Day on May the 4th. Since we're not here with you at the beginning of next week, we'll give you those series as well. Yankees are home to San Diego. That's going to be really fun. Good litmus test for the Yankees as well. Padres have been really good this year. The Mets are going to be in Arizona. So the Mets actually play Diamondbacks 6 times over the next 10 games. So that's going to be fun. They get Monday, Tuesday, late games, Wednesday at 3:40 in the afternoon, and then everybody's off Thursday. So when we come back with you Friday, we'll preview the Yankees out in Sacramento against the A's, and we'll preview the Mets against the Cubs. A little Chicago action this weekend, so next weekend. That should be a lot of fun here for the locals. But all in all, again, if you look at the baseball records right now, a combined 37-17 as we head into May. Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. We'll take one more break. We'll come back. We'll talk some soccer and some St. John's to wrap up the show. You're listening to New York State Sports, 90 Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. We'll wrap up episode 90 after this.
What does he got on the head? Hey, yo, what's good, Georgia? It's your boy ACS, and if you love sports from the Peach State as much as I do, then Georgia Sports Central is your one-stop destination for down south sports, courtesy of IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you a yellow jacket at heart, or do you bleed the red and black of the Bulldogs? Do you keep it true to Atlanta with Trae Young, Capella, and the boys? Do you rise up with the Dirty Birds on Sundays? Are you excited to see what the future holds for Michael Penix Jr., Bijan, and the rest of the Falcon squad? Do you live at 755 Battery Avenue? Do you rep for Albies, Acuna, and the rest of Braves country? If so, then let's get united every Wednesday for some Braves, Hawks, UGA, Georgia Tech, Atlanta Dream, Falcons, and more on Georgia Sports Central, only on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daryl Kinsey Jr. I'm welcoming you to take another lap with the fastest show on IE Sports Radio. Yes, this is the Extra Mile with me and my co-hosts Christopher Lehman and Michael Ward. We talk everything racing from NASCAR to IndyCar to Formula One to limited hydroplanes, endurance racing, the NHRA, and more. So come join us for an hour of great racing talk and a lot of fun as well on the Extra Mile, Thursdays at 8 p.m. only on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Wrapping up episode 90 of New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. Ricky K here with you for our grab bag segment. We go around, look at some of the smaller sports in the area. Taryn, of course, our big volleyball guy from Set Point. Damon, shout out to them. They won the NEC tournament for men's volleyball. They beat St. Francis in 4, and they will play Penn State in the play-in match on Friday. So Penn State's one of those interesting teams. I think Princeton played Penn State recently. So a lot of local volleyball success that we'll start to follow here as we get into the late spring, early summer portion. So shout out to Taryn. Be sure to check out Set Point every Monday. Good stuff going on there. Let's talk some soccer. Red Bulls get a win over a team that, well, doesn't have any wins. They beat Montreal, who's 0-3-7 on the year that we talked about from both the Red Bulls and NYCFC. They desperately needed wins against some bad teams over the weekend. And Noah Ellie, he got the goal in the 67th minute to break up the scoreless draw. You look at this game, and it was a very physical game for the Red Bulls. They had 4 yellow cards, but they had a lot of opportunities to score, 6 corner kicks in this one. But a good game by Carlos Cornell and net. He had 5 saves. Definitely kept Montreal at bay in this one to get them the win. That puts them at 4-3-3 on the year. Their next game is going to be this Saturday, 7:30 Eastern, and out in Miami. They're taking on Messi. So that's always going to be an interesting one. And then next Tuesday, they will take on Colorado, the Switchbacks, in the U.S. Open Cup round of 32. So it'll take a little bit of a breather from MLS at least Tuesday to talk about that. And next week, we'll preview the MLS Cup rematch. It'll be next Saturday against the Galaxy. So Red Bulls over 500 for the time being. Meanwhile, NYCFC, they were out in Toronto trying to bounce back, and they had a scoreless game as well in the second half until they get a penalty. And Alonso Martinez, who has been, well, their everything scorer for them, gets a goal in the 64th minute to get the win 1-0 there. Martinez, like we said, has been everything is advertised, and they get just maybe a goal from him, and then Matt Freese does his thing in net. I mean, that's how they find ways to win these games. So shout out to them for getting the job done and finding a way to get a win that puts them at 4-2-4. They will next play on they play Saturday. I think they play Saturday. It's Sunday. So Sunday, 3:00 Eastern. They will play Cincinnati. That game will be at Citi Field. Cincy has been probably the best team in the Eastern Conference at 7-1-2. They're atop the table at 22 points. Red Bulls right now are 8th at 15. NYCFC is 9th at 14. But right now, you look at the difference between Red Bulls and Miami. Miami's at 18. It's only a 3-point difference. So not a bad option for them to be in at all. NYCFC will play Cincy. Then they will start their U.S. Open Cup play on Wednesday when they will take on the Pittsburgh Soccer Club. So that's going to be a fun matchup there. NYCFC also made an addition this week. It's not quite they still could use that big designated player impact that I think they can maybe look to get over the course of the summer, but they made one small move to help their team. They added an Australian midfielder by the name of Aidan O'Neill. He is from Standard Liège, that is the Belgian pro club. He's under contract through 2028. He last season, for this year, he has 11 goals, 12 assists, and 205 appearances in his career. He was with Burnley in the past. He's played for Australia with 19 caps, so he's been part of the international experience. David Lee, the sporting director, said, Aiden's a smart and powerful midfielder with a high work rate, bringing valuable European experience and leadership. So always good to have that into the mix. And again, they could use the help at midfield. Maybe he gets a couple of goals here or there. So Aidan O'Neill, now part of NYCFC, and that should be a fun experience for him. Meanwhile, Gotham FC, we talk about an up and down week for them. They had a game last Tuesday against Portland Thorns. It was 1-1 till the second half. Esther Gonzalez, she can make a case right now for NWSL Player of the Year. She's been that good. She's been, the offense for them. And she went out, scored a tie, but Portland gets 3 goals in the second half within the span of 19 minutes. So they get the split out west. Remember, they crushed Angel City 4 days prior. So they stayed out west. They get a split. And then they play Washington. And Washington was the team, of course, that knocked them out in the semis last year. Sarah Shapansky, she scored in the 3rd minute. And then Gonzalez scores in the 32nd minute and gets a penalty kick. 7 minutes later, she puts it in the back of the net. She has been, like we said, everything that this team has needed, especially with the injuries to Rose Lavelle and Tiana Davidson. She's got 7 goals in 7 starts this year. And she's also converted on 23 shots. So she has done everything that anybody could ask her to. She has been money for this team. You look at Gotham right now, they are 3-2-2. That's off a rough start. Maybe they had a tough time scoring goals at the beginning of the season. And they have now pulled into 4th on the table, 1 point behind Washington for 3rd, tied with KC and Orlando in the top spot. Their next opponent will be Sunday. That's a 1:00 game that is on CBS. And they will take on the Chicago Stars, a team who they've actually beaten 4 of the last 5 times. They were 1-0 against them last year in 2 matches. They had a 0-0 draw in July and a 2-0 win back in October. And then we'll be back next week to preview their matchup in Louisville against Racing Louisville FC. That'll be an 8:00 match next Friday on Amazon Prime. So a couple of matches for Gotham coming up. And, of course, we got to talk college basketball. St. John's continues to add players and continues to give themselves really one of the best transfer classes in the country. Now, they didn't go out and add. They did make 1 transfer ad and then 1 recruit ad. So it's very important. Recruiting-wise, they went out and added Imran Soljanovic from Austria. And he's a player that could really shoot the 3. You look at between him and Leotopoulos, they've got a couple of players that can shoot the ball from the outside. They've added more offense in addition to their defense. And the other move they made was Dylan Darling. He is the transfer from Idaho State, Big Sky player, one of the best players in the Big Sky last year. And he's a guy that can bring good defense and offensive mix into the equation. That's what Patino likes. Said he had an extremely good workout. And he also gives some point guard insurance. Like, let's say Ian Jackson struggles at point to begin the year. You have Darling now that could be either your sixth man or he could start and put Jackson off the bench. So there's options with this group. There's still a couple of scholarships left. We'll see if they decide to make a move. Maybe they add another player. Who knows? Maybe RJ wants to come back. I mean, I don't think that'll happen, but you never know with the way college basketball goes. But you look at all these like early season polls, and unfortunately, you can't start the year now. We would love to. We're still waiting for late October. But you look at all these preseason polls, St. John's is probably number 2 in the range of 2 and 5 in the country to begin next year. And that's exciting. Now, there was also a report this week that if a team bows out of that CBS Sports Classic, that St. John's could get added in. And what's intriguing about that is you can maybe get a St. John's Kentucky matchup. Rick Pitino against his alma mater. It should be great. Remember, Louisville's been talked about as an option for next year. For future years, they're going to play Ole Miss at the Garden coming up this upcoming season, matchup with Chris Beard. So that's a lot of fun. Overall, they'll get Michigan in an exhibition. So St. John's schedule is going to be very fun to watch next year. They're going to get battle tested early, but they built a team with a lot of depth. Now, what I teased at the beginning of the show was the decision in the Big East that might hurt St. John's next year. Alex Caravan today, the UConn player, pulled out of the draft. He's going to come back. And UConn, despite it's disappointing second round exit last year, St. John's at the same second round exit, but UConn was like an 8-9 seed, didn't have the expectations. You now add Caravan to solo ball, and some of the guys UConn's brought in, including I think Silas Newberry from Georgia. They could be the top 10 team as well. Like you look at the Big East next year right now, St. John's, UConn, and Creighton stacking themselves up extremely well. But Caravan's going to be a thorn in people's side. He's going to come back for one more year, try to bolster that draft stock a little bit. But Pitino versus Hurley, the rivalry is only going to get even that much better. And one final note, these sports-wise, Kyle McCord gets drafted by the Eagles. I love that pick for him. Love it. The one thing you look at the Eagles, Howie Rosen does a really good job of developing quarterbacks. Kyle McCord under Jalen Hurts gets a chance to learn. Maybe Hurts doesn't play in a game and you see McCord get an option. Now that Kenny Pickett's in Cleveland, Kyle McCord kind of has an avenue to maybe be the backup in Philadelphia and gets it. When you get picked in the 6th round, you're looking for lanes and teams you can fit in best with. And I think Kyle McCord does that extremely well. So one final note, of course, again, thank you for those who tuned in today. Since we don't normally go live on Tuesdays, but we went live this afternoon. And our next show is going to be Friday, May 9th. Friday will be our new start time, noon Eastern. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, we were doing Mondays during the football season, kind of be your first look at the Sunday that was in the NFL. Now we're going to kind of give you a preview into the weekend in baseball, especially with both these teams being solid, the Mets and the Yankees. It'll be good to kind of look at these series each and every week, recap the week that's been so far, and look ahead to the weekend. So Friday, May 9th at noon. It doesn't mean you're not going to get another episode coming up. If, like we talked about earlier, if the Knicks advance, maybe we'll do a second round preview show. Maybe we'll do a post game during the week for any second round series. But the next big all sports show will be May 9th at noon Eastern. So again, thanks to all those who tuned in today. Should be a fun party at Madison Square Garden tonight between the Knicks and the Pistons. Can the Knicks close them out? Can they get that win to advance to the next round? Maybe meet the Boston Celtics. We shall see. Should be a lot of fun there. We will talk, of course, that maybe the Devils, can they hold off elimination and extend the series against the Hurricanes to Game 6? That should be an interesting matchup. The Mets taking on Arizona. Diamondbacks are a team that you could see in the playoffs. Can the Mets pass another test? The Yankees, they will try to maybe give the Orioles a little bit of a sting these next couple of days. And they will play San Diego next week. So the Yankees playing well. They get Devin Williams a little bit of a breather in terms of possibilities between pitchers or not, whether they advance. We shall see. But for right now, fully in the mix to see what this team does going forward. I'm excited to see what both these baseball teams can be. I think both are pretty good. Speaking of the NFL draft, Giants were solid. Again, one of the better picks in this draft class, one of the better drafts, I think, in the league. And if this is Joe Shane's last draft, and I still seem to think that it's tough for me that those guys will last next year. The Giants, to me, I thought did a really good job, added a lot of impactful pieces that can go a long way. Jets, not great, but not bad either. And I think that's something where you got to tip your cap to Aaron Glenn. They're finding pieces that can fit what they want to do, and ultimately that will help them in the long run become more successful, kind of build some stability that this team I think desperately needs to win. Again, thank you all those who tuned in today. It's been a fun chat here talking to all you guys. Thanks to Taryn, thanks to Ralph, thanks to Brian. It's been so much fun. We got a great lineup for you tonight. Bullpen Bulletin I'll be on that show coming up later tonight at 9 o'clock. A lot of fun that we'll check out there. Again, Alden Taylor, myself, Mike Pat, the gang will be all here. We'll rip maybe Alden a little bit because Eugenio Suarez had 4 home runs and they didn't win. Like, I think that's the weird thing too. Like, you have a team that happens that way. We'll talk Mets and Diamondbacks on the show tonight. We'll talk Yankees, Orioles on Bullpen Bulletin tonight. And what's fun with doing that, remember we got college baseball. We'll do some college baseball on the show. We'll do some college softball on the show to get to the NCAA tournaments, conference tournaments, and softball. I did start in a couple of weeks. And remember, baseball, the selection show is Memorial Day. We're about a month away from starting the baseball tournament. So we'll have some fun on that show as well. Thanks to all those who tuned in. Taryn, great job. Of course, the proverbial man behind the X account does a really good job in sending out those awesome tweets for you guys. See him, well, you don't see him, but he's one of the great behind-the-scenes people here at the network. Thanks to all those who tuned in. Got a great lineup tonight here on Tuesdays. We got Tornado Takeover with Angela and Fred. The Neutral Zone, Adam Karnick and Zach Puckless. They're going to be talking about all the hockey games. They're going to be talking a lot of Devils. Hopefully talking to Devils win. We have Bullpen Bulletin and Sin City with Cale Henderson talking some Vegas Raiders and some Ashton Genty talk that should be great. Thank you again to all those who tuned in. For myself, for Larry B, and for all of us in the IE Sports family, I'm Ricky K. Saying a great rest of your week. And I'll see you back at our new showtime Friday, May 9th at noon. If not before then, we'll be hoping to look maybe a Nick Celtic show if that does happen. We'll see. But until then, enjoy the week, everybody.